It's 6 p.m. on a Friday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us begin with the headlines. Korea celebrates the West Sea Defense Day to honor soldiers who gave their lives while protecting the West Sea against a North Korean attack. In her speech to mark the occasion, President Park Geun-hye highlighted the importance of improving security conditions while warning Pyongyang that continued provocations will only lead to its self-destruction. In politics, candidate registration for the general election to take place on April 13th wraps up today. It's said to be a historic one, with 3 parties involved in the parliamentary race for the first time in the 21st century. Brussels' terrorist attacks may be the tip of the iceberg as ongoing investigations reveal that ISIS has been preparing to spread more terror in other major cities across Europe. We start off here in Korea. Today is West Sea Defense Day here. It was established to remember and pay tribute to the thousands of South Koreans who sacrificed their lives to protect the nation on the Western Sea border. In her speech at a special ceremony in Daejeon, President Park Geun-hye reaffirmed her will to reinforce defense readiness and warned North Korea that it must change or take the route to self-destruction. Song Ji-sun has our top story.
While paying tribute to the fallen soldiers who died protecting the West Sea from North Korean provocations, President Park Geun-hye stressed that Seoul will stand strong against any threats from the North and that its reckless provocations will only lead to self-destruction. The president said she will solicit the wisdom of world leaders at the Nuclear Security Summit in Washington next week to resolve the nuclear issue and nuclear terror threats from North Korea.
국제사회가 북한의 핵 개발과 도발을 더 이상 용납할 수 없다는 단호한 의지를 결집하고 있는 지금이 북한 정권을 변화시킬 수 있는 기회입니다. 여기서 우리가 또다시 물러선다면 북한의 핵 능력 고도화로 한반도에 돌이킬 수 없는 재앙이 닥치고 경제는 마비될 것입니다.
She said that North Korea is more isolated than ever after the recent comprehensive international sanctions, and added that the chances of additional provocations are higher than ever. Calling on the military to be on full alert, the president also stressed the importance of national unity.
국가 안보를 지키는 길에는 이념도 정파도 있을 수 없습니다. 대한민국을 지키는 가장 큰 힘은 국민의 하나된 마음과 애국심에서 나옵니다. 우리나라가 오늘의 안보 위기를 슬기롭게 극복하고 한반도 평화통일 시대를 열어갈 수 있도록 국민 여러분께서 하나로 힘을 모아주시기 바랍니다.
Reiterating her message on the need for heightened security conditions, President Park also attended the opening of a police agency in northern Gyeonggi-do province, urging them to ensure the safety of residents living in areas within close proximity to North Korea. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Staying with Korea's maiden West Sea Defense Day, now the day will be celebrated or marked on the 4th Friday of March every year from here forth. Our KWON Jang-ho traces back to the events leading up to the tribute.
On the evening of the 4th Friday of March in 2010, a North Korean submarine fired a torpedo at the CHEONAN warship off the west coast of the peninsula in the West Sea. The attack came without warning or reason, killing 46 of the 104 men on board. After several investigations by South Korean and international authorities, it was determined that the sinking had been caused by a North Korean torpedo.
We can confirm that the recovered torpedo fragments were made in North Korea.
North Korea denied responsibility, but 8 months later, openly fired around 170 artillery shells and rockets at Yeonpyeong Island, killing 2 soldiers and 2 civilians. Yeonpyeong was also another location of a flashpoint in 2002. North Korean ships crossed the maritime border between the 2 Koreas near the island. The South Korean Navy warned the North Korean ships to turn back, but they began firing instead. 6 South Korean soldiers were killed, and over a dozen North Korean men also died. Incidents like these have led to the designation of the West Sea Defense Day in South Korea. It is a day to commemorate the lives lost to North Korean aggression and reinforces Seoul's commitment to defending the area. Recent provocations by the North have highlighted the dangers the peninsula still faces. But this day is for celebrating the bravery of the lost soldiers and the sacrifices made for their country. KWON Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Verbal threats directed at South Korea have been coming out of Pyongyang since the Seoul-Washington drills have kicked off. It's apparently seen as part of efforts by the regime to turn around the current situation where North Korea is facing the strongest international sanctions to date. Connie Kim has this report.
North Korea has threatened to destroy South Korean government organizations and forcefully reunify the two Koreas. The latest threats came from North Korea's Korean Central News Agency on Friday, as a leader of the communist state Kim Jong-un supervised the regime's largest long-range artillery exercises to date. Kim has reportedly ordered his military to be ready for combat so it can ruthlessly carry out an attack at any moment. According to pictures released by the Dodong-sinmun, the North's official state-run newspaper, a target is shown seemingly looking like an island in flames from an attack, and some 100 long-range artilleries that are capable of targeting Seoul and other metropolitan areas in South Korea. Pyongyang has upped its bellicose rhetoric to its highest level during the annual Seoul-Washington joint military drills, following the UN's heaviest sanctions on the regime early this month. The South Korean Unification Ministry believes that two intentions lie behind the North's continuous provocations and words of threat.
On the external front, Pyongyang is trying to give the perception that international sanctions on North Korea have weakened to change around the current situation. Internally, Kim Jong-un may be trying to consolidate his regime.
North Korea forged ahead with shooting short and mid-range missiles and test-firing its multiple rocket launchers 4 times since it fired a long-range ballistic missile a month after its 4th nuclear test. North Korea is expected to continue its belligerent rhetoric and provocations during the Seoul-Washington military drills. But it remains to be seen whether North Korea can use tactics such as the firing of missiles as a negotiating tool against South Korea and the U.S. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Turning to the local domestic political arena now, the 2-day candidacy registration concluded today as Korea's political parties continue to prepare for their upcoming campaigns. The ruling Saenuri Party finalized its candidates amid prolonged internal strife, while the opposition bloc moved ahead with its campaign preparations. Ji Myung-gil tells us more.
Candidate registration for the April 13th general elections finished up on Friday, with the ruling Saenuri Party, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, and the newly minted People's Party looking to officially launch campaign committees as soon as possible. However, the Saenuri Party has been thrown into chaos as rival factions continue to clash over candidate nominations. Saenuri Chairman Kim Moo-sung, who is not a member of the faction loyal to President Park Geun-hye, has been refusing to approve 6 nominations. After Friday's Supreme Council meeting, the members decided not to endorse candidates in 3 districts. Meanwhile, the main opposition Minju Party's interim leader Kim Jong-un has taken a step towards getting the party back on its feet by trying to ease internal tensions. Kim promised to back up the party's candidates by supporting their campaigns for victory in the April polls. The ruling party wants to retain its majority, while the Minju Party has defined the election as a referendum on the Park administration and its failures. The newly formed People's Party is vowing to change the 2-party system into a 3-party system and is seeking to garner 20% of the vote. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
For the first time in 20 years, Koreans heading to the polls will have 3 major parties to vote for instead of the normal 2. According to our Shin Se-min, this is just one of the several factors that make this year's election stand out from previous ones.
3 negotiating political parties will be on the ballot paper when Koreans enter polling stations on April 13th. It'll mark the first time since the mid-1990s that more than 2 will be in the running. They are the ruling Saenuri Party, which holds a majority of 146 seats in the 300-seat National Assembly, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, with 102, and the minor opposition People's Party, which was recently bestowed the status of a negotiating bloc, with 21 seats. Korea saw its last multi-party election in 1996 when 4 parties went head-to-head. That's also when the opposition blocs stopped the then-ruling New Korea Party led by former late President Kim Il-sung from securing a majority. But this year's race isn't expected to have a similar outcome.
The infighting within the parties during the candidate nomination process, especially within the Saenuri Party and the Minju Party of Korea, caused a rift between supporters of the individual parties. But I don't expect voters to switch allegiances.
The nomination feud in the ruling party revolved around lawmakers loyal to President Park Geun-hye and those not in her faction, like Yoo Sung-min, who left the party on Wednesday to run as an independent. The turmoil was not limited to the ruling party, though. The infighting between the faction loyal to the late President Roh Moo-hyun and those not allied with Roh put a strain on the main opposition Minju Party. The party is being run by interim leader Kim Jong-in, who stepped up after pro-Roh member Moon Jae-in resigned as chairman under pressure from lawmakers unhappy with his leadership. The minor opposition People's Party lost a key member of its leadership, Election Committee Chair Kim Han-gil, after a conflict with party founder and co-chair An Chol-soo about whether to embrace the Minju Party's proposal to join forces to win the election. Experts say this year's election should be one to watch, as a number of factors like the country's delayed electoral map and the hotly contested nomination process have spiced things up. One thing for sure, though, the results will be a good indicator of how the party's presidential candidates will do in the big one next year. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, Korea's gross national income per capita last year dropped for the first time in 6 years. The central bank cites the trend of a weaker local currency as a main reason for that decline, but concerns remain as the current economic conditions still reflect sluggish growth prospects. HWANG Ji-hye brings us some disappointing digits.
It looks like Korea's long targeted goal of topping the $30,000 mark in per capita gross national income will have to sit on the back burner for yet another year. The Bank of Korea says the country's income per person last year stood at $27,340, down 2.6% from a year ago. It's the first decline since the country was pummeled by the global financial crisis in 2009. The central bank attributes the drop to the weakening Korean won against the greenback that dragged down the dollar converted value.
The won on average weakened 7.4% against the dollar last year. So you can say the drop in GNI per capita in dollar terms has everything to do with the exchange rate.
In the local currency, the gross national income per capita did rise more than 4%, but it looks hard for Korea to completely brush aside concerns about growth losing its puff. The economy grew 2.6% last year, marking the slowest pace of expansion in 3 years. And forecasts suggest Korea will fail to expand in the 3% range again this year, facing a plunge in exports for the 14th straight month now and languishing domestic demand.
Recently, uncertainties over growth have been surging. We're seeing a clear trend of households increasing savings instead of spending.
In fact, Korea's overall savings rate hit the highest in 11 years last year, inching above the 35% mark. With that, experts project the BOK is expected to slash its 3% growth outlook for this year when it releases its new forecast next month. And the trim, they add, could point to more cuts in the key rate down the road that currently stands at a record low of 1.5%. HWANG Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Creating quality jobs is Korea's most pressing economic goal. That's according to Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol, who says the reason why society pays such keen attention to job data is because job security is closely related to the welfare of households and the people. Last month, the youth unemployment rate in Korea hit an all-time high of 12.5%. The central bank chief adds the rise was partly due in part to seasonal factors such as the usual mass exodus during the Lunar New Year holiday and many young people taking the state civil servant exam. He also stressed the need to quickly prepare for rapid technological developments, especially in the education sector, as innovation in education system will help people prepare for future jobs and better adapt to the changing environment. Outside of Korea, Brussels' attack may be a part of a larger series of terrorism activities targeting Europe. Lee Ji-won updates us on the latest intel reports on Islamic extremists' potential next moves.
Intelligence reports, online monitoring, and database tracking by the U.S. counterterrorism officials reveal that Islamic State extremists have identified several possible targets for terror attacks. According to CNN, the IS extremists had been planning attacks on major cities of Europe, including London, Berlin, and most recently Brussels, since the Paris attacks last November. It has also been reported that maps marking potential targets were found in the apartment of the suicide bombers in Brussels. The broadcast said the intelligence agency found evidence that a total of 60 terrorists had been dispatched for the attacks, corroborating the mastermind of the attacks, Abdelhamid Abaoud's claim that 90 IS soldiers were already in Europe. Meanwhile, Belgium authorities have once again been criticized for their investigation of the last surviving suspect of the Paris attacks, Salah Abdeslam, who was arrested in Brussels last week. According to The Telegraph, a UK-based newspaper, investigators failed to adequately question Abdeslam regarding the possibility of additional terror plots. The news is especially disturbing as it follows the discovery of more evidence pointing to future attacks, including machinery and weapons found at Abdeslam's safe house. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
That's all we have for you at this hour. Thank you for watching.